All right, welcome to Unit 5. I already recorded this, but somehow it never saved because this iPad is crazy. So hopefully this one will save. Okay, so we're skipping lesson 1 because it's a thing we would have had to have done in person. It was like a game, so that's not really going to work. So the takeaway from lesson 1 was an introduction to functions, being that like you input some sort of a number or a variable, you have a rule that gives you only one answer. So like, for example, you could say, I don't know, like 7, and then the rule could be square it, and then, your answer would be 49, because whatever you get, like, you're going to only get that one output for squaring it. Like, even if you did -7 and squared it, you'd still get the same answer, so that would work. Okay, so that's what a function is. Okay, so for this activity, activity 1, they give you a bunch of numbers in a list. How many different numbers are in the list? So make sure you're counting negatives and positives to come up with this number. So like that counts as 1, that's 2, that's 3, and then you're going to get your number. Make a new list containing the squares. I would go through and write like 1 squared equals 1, comma, -3 squared equals 9, comma, because remember, squared is just like, okay, -3 squared is just -3 times -3. That's the same as if we did 3 squared, that's also 9. So your answer here is going to be a little bit different. And then just explain why these two lists don't have the same number of different numbers. That's because of negative and positive. And you can talk about what happens when you multiply negative by negative. Okay. A person is 60 inches tall. Do you know their height in feet? So I'm just going to show this to you because it's easier. Here is your input. That's 60. Your output answer needs to be the height in feet. Height in feet, which is this. So then how did you get that? Well, to get that, you did this specific rule, and that's the same here. You converted inches to feet, or you could say you divided by 12. Okay. You know this, do you know that? So it wants you to say yes or no to each question, and that means that yes or no, as in there is one answer only. A person, okay, and then draw the diagram. If it's yes, if no, give an example of 2 different outputs that are possible. You don't need to do this. If no, forget that. That's just so time consuming. If no, just write no. We don't need to do that. That's a waste of time. Okay, a person is 5.5 feet tall. Do you know their height in inches? So you could say, okay, I have my input, that's 5.5. And then my rule is that, yeah, I can do this because I know that there's 12 inches in a foot. And then I can say, well, that's equal to 66. Then you're going to do the same thing for all of these. Some of them will be no. So like, for example, number 3, it says the square of a number is 16. Do you know the number? So you could say, well, no, because 16 squared could be, 4 squared is 4 times 4, or it could be -4 squared, and that's -4 times -4, and those are different numbers. So you don't know the number because it could be either one, so you're going to say no. You'd have to for sure know the number in order for it to be a function. So like a square has a perimeter of 12. Do you know its area? Well, a square has equal length sides, so of course you're going to be able to know its area, because 12, how do you do, 4 sides and 12? Well, 3 times 4 is 12, so each one of these sides has to be 3, which means to get the area, you do the side squared, so there's only one answer, and you can write that in the same format as we did number 1. Number 5, think about a rectangle. It's not like a square, so would that be a yes or a no? If the area is 16, well, what numbers multiply to get 16 if you can have different length sides? You could do 16 times 1, but you could also do 8 times 2 and so on. So think about that. 7 and 8, 6 and 7 are pretty straightforward. For this lesson 3 or activity 3, it wants you to take the same exact, I'm not going to read all this, but it wants you to take the same questions and put it into a function statement. So like the example is bounce height is a function of drop height. So like for number 1, you could write height in feet is a function of height in inches. So you're pretty much writing down your answer that you came up with already, except you're writing it in word form, kind of like how you did for your quiz. You could also write like height in feet depends on height in inches if you don't like the words function of. You could change that. So you could change function of to depends on if that makes you feel more comfortable. So you're just going to go through and rewrite your answer in, as a function of. And then if it's not, just write no. Like the square of a number is 16. Do you know the number? We're just going to write no. We can't write a function for that, so just leave it. We're skipping this. Are we skipping this? Which input-output rules could describe the same function, if any? Be prepared to explain your reasoning. Oh, we can talk about it really fast. Okay, so 7 squared is 49. If you're adding 90 to 10, that's 100. So yeah, 10 squared is 100. But what if we had not 10? What if we had 5? Then we add 90. We're going to get 95. So are those the same thing is what it's asking you. So kind of think about if you think those are the same. Like are any of these like the same exact thing written differently? So square it, add 90, and find the area given the side length. Are any of those the same? So remember, area given side length, the formula for area is like side length squared. Because if they're saying given the side length, I think we could assume they're talking about a square. The side of a square, since all sides are equal, so that might be similar. So think about what you remember about math stuff for that one. And then the biggest takeaway for this is to understand this, what they're talking about in this slide. So a function is a rule that assigns to each allowable input exactly one input. So that means that for each value we put in, and the rule, specific rule, there can only be one answer. So that's the most important thing. If there's any question that it could be more than one answer, even if it's just a negative, positive difference, then it is not a function. Has to be very specific. Yeah. The rest of that, don't worry about. Okay. Join help at 1:40. Let me know ahead of time, and you still have to do practice problems as well. So don't forget that. Alrighty.